Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Pastor Roger Kisto of the Loud Cry team, and I'm here again today to make another installment with this subject, leaving the cities and the two sieges, with special emphasis on the assumption of power. This statement that I'm going to read to you, I read it last time in part 1. It says, and it's taken from the book Maranatha, page 180, paragraph number 2. It says, as the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was the signal for flight to the Judean Christians, so the assumption of power, listen to this, so the assumption of power on the part of our nation in the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath will be a warning for us. And it talks further on about leaving the cities, going to smaller places, and then planning to leave to go to the mountains. So our first move to the smaller places is in preparation to go to the mountains. There we would not have all our amenities and the nice things that we are accustomed to. But pay attention to this as I reiterate. As the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was the signal for flight to the Judean Christians, so the assumption of power will be our time to move. So let's recap a little bit. In Matthew 24 and Luke 21, we are given warning of the siege of Jerusalem and the flight of the Christians, and this was in AD 66 under Cestius. This was the first siege. He was distracted. He pulled back his attack, and that was the sign that was told when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. It is time for you to move. He that is on the housetop, do not come down. He that is in the field, do not come back to gather anything. So it was the time for them to move. However, there was a second siege under Titus in AD 70, that famous destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, where thousands of Jewish people died. That was the desolation because of the abomination that was done by the Roman armies. So is there a parallel? We want to answer the question at least partially, because to my mind there is still a little gray area, but we're going to see how far we're going to get. When is the time to leave? Is it now? Okay, so let's look at some stuff. What is this assumption of power? And Mrs. White, again in Selected Messages, book 2, page 359, she says, when you see the assumption of power in our time, that's the parallel to the first siege to move, because after that it will be the desolation because of the abomination. She says in, again, Selected Messages, book 2, page 359, paragraph 5, she says, the Protestant world have set up an idol Sabbath in the place where God's Sabbath should be. So is that the assumption of power? They have set it up. But she doesn't finish there. She says, and they are treading in the footsteps of the papacy. Then this part of the statement says, for this reason, what reason? They are treading in the path of the papacy, as well as they have set up an idol Sabbath. She didn't say going to set up. She says they have set up. For this reason, Mrs. White continues, I see the necessity of the people of God moving out of the cities into retired country places where they may cultivate the land and raise their own produce. This was written in 1897. And then in 1889, she calls out the National Reform Movement, which is now called the National Reform Association. She says this, Review and Herald, January 1, 1889. She says, we must show to the world that we recognize in the events that are now taking place in connection with the National Reform Movement the fulfillment of prophecy. What is this prophecy that she's speaking about? She's speaking about specifically the idea of moving out of the cities, because the idol Sabbath has been set up, which is this parallel to this first siege that took place in AD 66, where the Lord said, Christ himself said in Matthew and in the book of Luke, that it is time to leave. She says further, that which we have for the last 30 or 40 years proclaimed would come is now here, and the trumpet of every watchman upon the walls of Zion should raise an alarm. So I think that I humbly have fallen into that category. It's a really renowned category to be a watchman on the walls of Zion, saying that it is time to leave. Now, of course, there are many conditions upon which the individual and the family would leave. There is much conversation and light on this. So we're not just moving willy-nilly and just packing up because of fear. Every man must be convicted. You must have practical knowledge of things to move and so on. Many things have to be taken into consideration. But we are saying here, I'm saying here, based upon these few texts, that something is in the pipe works. Who is this National Reform Association? In 1863, representatives of 11, notice the year 1863, representatives of 11 denominations convened at Xenia, Ohio, and organized a federation. And what is their purpose? Of placing the name of God in the federal constitution. Now, there are many Protestant groups who believe that they need to make America a Christian nation. This is what they believe. But in doing that, they will, of course, set up what they believe to be Christianity. And when it comes to the day of worship, we know that it will end up being Sunday. I don't need to be very diplomatic about that. Listen again. This is taken from the American State Papers in Washington, D.C. In the year 1911. This is their charter, the National Reform Association, that Mrs. White calls the National Reform Movement. It says, the object of this society shall be to secure such an amendment to the Constitution. Now, I looked at this already. The Constitution guarantees in its 2 clauses in the Bill of Rights, in Amendment number 1, a free exercise clause, and the other clause that not coming to my mind, but it disallows this. So here what they are seeking to do. The object of this society shall be to secure an amendment to the Constitution of the United States as will declare the nation's allegiance to Jesus Christ and its acceptance of the moral laws of the Christian religion. Really. And so indicate that this is a Christian nation and place all the Christian laws, its institutions and usages of our government on an undeniably legal basis in the fundamental law of the land. Would they have their way? They will have their way. Because we are told in Revelation 13 that this, in the setting up of the image, that power will that lamb-like beast will speak, which is to legislate, and to cause, which is to command and enforce all that is written there in that charter. That's not all. And I read this a couple of weeks ago, but I need to reread it. Facts of the Times, page 165 says, we need it, that's this change of the Constitution, to correct our most unfortunate attitude under the First Amendment, which restrains Congress from prohibiting the free exercise of any false religion. Any false religion? Who determines that? And I thought America was built upon the whole idea of freedom of religion. I could go in the middle of the square and worship a stone as long as I'm not interfering with the rights and freedoms and privileges of the state and other people. You see what I'm saying? So this is something that is very dangerous. So Mrs. White is saying, when we see this thing that has begun, which is the assumption of power, then we know that it is time to leave. Is it time to leave? I am certain. Yeah. The word says, or rather their charter further says, our remedy for all these malefic influences is to have the government simply set up the moral law and recognize God's authority behind it and lay its hand on any religion that does not conform to it. What do you want to hear more than that? Do you want to hear more than that? And finally, from Religious Liberty in America by C.M. Snow, page 266-67 says, I'm going to just read it briefly. It says, we want state and religion, and we are going to have it. Serious times. Yeah, and then it says lower down, these all are for the occasion, and as far as our amendment is concerned, one class. Who is this one class? Let me read a little higher up. It says, so far as the affairs of the state require religion, it shall be religion, the religion of Jesus Christ. So therefore, the Muslim, the heathen religion, the whoever is now ruled out. It says, we use the word religion in its proper sense, as meaning a man's personal relation of faith and obedience to God. Now we are warned that to engraft this doctrine upon the Constitution will be oppressive, that it will infringe the right of conscience, and we are told that there are atheists, deists, Jews, and Seventh-day Baptists who would suffer from it. Then it says, these are all for the occasion and so far as our amendment is concerned, one class. What are the rights of the atheists? So they call all of those who do not believe how they believe a state religion should be run, call them atheists. It says, I would tolerate him as I would tolerate a conspirator. conspirator, conspiracy, terrorist. All right, so beloved, we are in serious times. I implore us to pay particular attention to these things. And it is not done. I have more on it. But as time goes by, we will have more. Again, I'm Pastor Roderick Histo of the Loud Cry team. Be blessed. Share and keep the fire burning. Be that watchman on the walls of Zion. God bless you.